Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and here, by popular demand, is Mom, the one who's responsible for all this stuff I've been putting you through for the past 3 years. Hello, Mom.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for joining me. We're here to talk about how I got into classical music and what the fabulous legacy of my family is in the performing arts, which makes us giggle just thinking about it, actually. In a previous video, you may recall, I did a discussion about my father, who was actually the talented one in the family. He was really gifted as a pianist and had the possibility for making a real career in music. But my grandmother was so psychotic about it that he wound up hating it and wouldn't have anything to do with it. But then there's the other side of the family, and that's where Mom comes in. Mom and I were probably equally gifted as pianists, wouldn't you say?
No, definitely.
I mean, we had a piano, and it was Mom's piano. It was a Knabe piano. I remember vividly.
Knabe upright.
Okay, when did you start taking piano lessons, or did you ever?
Yes, when I was about 9. I took lessons for a while.
Yeah?
It didn't go well. And it required traveling. And I had to get on a bus and go someplace that was kind of far.
You were in Wilmington,
I was in Wilmington, yeah.
Wilmington, Delaware.
Yeah.
And, but you used to play when I was a kid. You played the Camp Canadensis theme,
I can play
song.
I could play all that, and I could play Autumn Leaves really well.
Okay.
And because I knew it in French, which I thought was really swell.
Yeah.
But I really was not gifted at the piano, which we'll get to in a minute.
Well, your family was not supportive of your pianistic ambitions?
The big story was when I was a junior in high school. The school was very crowded, and I lived across the street. And if you took your study hall and your lunch period together, you had like a couple of hours. And I could walk across the street and do whatever I wanted, so I decided I would take piano lessons. Let's just say it didn't go well.
Oh, what happened?
Well, the teacher was very nice, and I was just not really very good at it. And one night, I would practice in the evening. My father would sit in his chair with his cigar and watch. And one night, as I was struggling to play the Skater's Waltz for about the 75th time, my father arose from his chair, pulled out his wallet, and put $2 on the piano and said, "Never play that again." And I quit.
And that was that, huh?
And that was it.
I mean, I sort of inflicted the same thing on our family with Gollywog's Cakewalk, you may recall,
yes.
when I was studying the piano.
And I decided that I would rather play tennis than piano. So
okay, well, that's understandable.
That's what I did.
Okay, but you had a record collection.
I did. I love music. I love music. I loved everything about it. My uncles, you're talking about World War II generation. My uncles were all in Europe during World War II, and they had records. And they brought back beautiful things and records and listened to music with me. And, when they came back, they were not a lot older than I was. And we had a very good relationship, and some of it was about music. And we listened to music together, and I did collect records.
And I sort of inherited a lot of your record collection.
When he was
Rachmaninoff and Doris Day.
No, I didn't. And when I was really much older, I got into things like jazz. I listened to someone called Chris Connors, which no one else has ever heard of, and Anita O'Day, which some of you may know of. But I always loved music.
Well, I mean, my audience is let's just say
in my age
more experienced.
We're
once you get past a certain age, it doesn't really matter. Right?
Yeah. Well, the World War II generation is my generation, so
yeah.
That was when I was introduced to these things, and we did not watch television in my family after dinner or anything. We either played bridge or played tennis. But which times we listened to music.
Okay. Well, do you remember you gave me your Wizard of Oz records? You had the original soundtrack recording of The Wizard of Oz on 78s.
Oh, yes, on 78.
And I broke every one of them.
Yeah, well.
In one day, I put them on a record changer because no one told me that 78s were fragile. Mm-hmm. And, they were all stacked up and they came down one after another and they broke in half. And you were quite annoyed with me.
I don't remember that.
I remember. Well, I always remember when you were annoyed with me.
Well,
but those childhood memories.
I had 3 children. Remember, there was a lot of annoyance.
There's a lot of annoyance. But one of the things I talk about in this series of how I discovered various composers was that it was thanks to you playing music while you did housework.
Yes, I did. Always
dusting to the can.
I could not work around the house, and. Actually, they're talking about housework. I actually did work. I had a career.
You had a real job, yes.
But I did dust to music. And if I did housework and dishes and things, or even cooking, I always put on music.
That's right.
I did. And it was, I loved it.
And so we just sort of absorbed it as it went. Mm-hmm. When we talk about how we first became accustomed to classical music, it wasn't because it was classical. It's because it was just there. Right?
Yeah, it was in the house.
It was just in the house. It was part of our lives. And it was from recordings. It wasn't from having a family that was, pushing us to...
Well, we didn't... My family did not have a lot of... My mother was a high school graduate. My father, I don't think, ever went past elementary school. And yet was one of the most erudite. He read every book that I bought in college. I had to send home so he could read it.
Yeah.
And he was very well read and very erudite. He could not pronounce most of the words, but he was there.
He was a butcher.
He was a butcher.
My grandfather was a butcher. Mm-hmm. And the only kosher butcher in Wilmington, Delaware.
Well, he was the wholesale butcher. There were We had the cows. Okay.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That was musical. So when I was growing up, I took piano lessons, right, from our travel agent, who's still around, and Harriet. Oh. I took piano lessons for a while.
And that's right. Yeah.
You remember. Yeah. And my father absolutely would not push us to practice.
And he would not touch the piano.
And he wouldn't touch the piano. And he was gifted. I mean, there was one day that I was, just going through stuff, and I found all of his awards, from all the piano competitions.
He told us that he had won all these things, but he never bragged about it or showed us anything. When we found these things, he really did. He won all these things at Juilliard and all these competitions.
Dad was really, really gifted and threw away his career. He didn't throw it away. He gave it up. He couldn't stand it.
He didn't want it.
He didn't want it. And so he wouldn't push any of us kids. Remember when my brother played the saxophone?
For 15 minutes.
But there was music everywhere, because Dad, you played your records. Dad, learned to play the guitar when I was sick.
Yeah.
And he would stay up with me because I was a sick kid. I had asthma and whatnot, and I would be up all night. And he learned to play the guitar for me. And it was all around. And I don't know if you'll remember this, but I remember this. I had a set of junior toy bagpipes in my closet.
I don't remember.
I don't know how they got there or whose they were.
We're talking about a long time ago.
This was a long time. I also had a marionette.
Yeah, that I remember.
You remember the marionette?
Mm-hmm.
Well, next to the marionette was a set of bagpipes that belonged to God knows who. I have absolutely no idea where it came from. But my father's side really had all the musical ability. I mean, he played. My psychotic aunt, his sister, she played.
Yeah, she danced.
She danced too. And, his parents were his mother anyway, were, driving them to accomplish something at all costs. But my mother's side was, at least, mom's side was more relaxed, shall we say. A little more mellow when it came to that stuff. But they treated music as something that was just a natural part of my upbringing, part of life, and encouraged it when I was interested. And it was because of Mom that I first got into classical music because, and the recording was Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony with William Steinberg, with Bruegel's The Harvesters on the cover, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like 6 years old, and I said to Mom, "What does this word mean?" It was pastoral, right? And you said to me, "Look at the picture. Look at the picture." And I put on the record and looked at the picture, and bang, a light went off in my head. That was really something. And your parents.
Plus the fact that when he didn't want to go to bed at night, I said you could go in bed and you could listen to music, but
Yeah.
it has to be my music.
Yeah.
And I had a collection that he listened to at night.
Well, listen, I didn't have any music in those days. My first record was Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah, but
Right.
yes, that's true. But I just said it has to be my music because I thought it was more relaxing, and maybe he'd go to sleep.
Yeah.
Then maybe his brother and sister would go to sleep.
Whatever worked.
Something could work.
Yeah, so that's how I got into it.
Yeah.
That is how it started. So that's it, I guess, right?
That's about it.
I just wanted to thank Mom for joining me and for encouraging me all these years, and for being my muse.
And I'm very proud of him, as I should be.
Here we go. This is the part where I blush.
Okay. No, I'm very proud of him. His knowledge is far surpassed anything I could have expected
Oh well.
in that. And he did, he was the kind of kid who did well in everything.
Except sports.
Except sports.
I wasn't an athlete.
But I was.
You were an athlete.
I was an athlete, yeah. And your brother and your sister were athletes.
Well, and in addition to being the musical, linchpin of my life, Mom is the possibly most knowledgeable sports addict you'll ever meet in your life. And we were just discussing how we were absolutely dazzled by the fact that a hockey team from Las Vegas could win the Stanley Cup, because it's such a natural hockey team and hockey town. Absolutely
Fascinating.
I said now they may have enough money to pay their electric bill for the rink. But anyway, we're not talking about sports. We're talking about music.
No.
So thank you, Mom.
You're
and
welcome.
Keep on listening, friends. Take care.